One specific drill you can do to move you more towards adopting more perfect global forefoot running mechanics is doing backward running drills, particularly barefoot or in zero drop, minimalistic, barefoot inspired running shoes on a flat, smooth, hard surface. How does running backwards help improve your overall running mechanics? By its very nature, when you run backwards, it prompts a rebalance in your center of mass, which is your head and your torso. You end up holding your center of mass over or very close to initial foot strike position, not behind initial foot strike position. By that token, when you run backwards, your forward lean, which will be very subtle, instantly creates less spatial distance between your torso and initial foot strike position. The value of this is that there's less abrupt, heavy, hard-hitting braking, and the minor brake force that is generated occurs in very short duration. In contrast, we see many runners running too upright with their center of mass, causing the bulk of their center of mass to remain behind initial foot strike position. Why is this postural configuration during running a problem? A large spatial distance between the torso and initial foot strike position that gets created when you run too upright produces a more intensive brake force or a more intensive brute collision force between you and the ground, which isn't useful for injury prevention and upholding good running economy, as the body is exposed to more impact, especially at faster running speeds. More mechanical work and muscular demands are essentially needed to tug the lagging center of mass up through the propulsive phase of running, which may be a vast energy leak. Furthermore, running too upright may be a costly mechanical mistake that can be difficult to sustain for the knees because, based on all the evidence that is known, running too upright with your upper body, the intensive deceleration force that flows from this appears to increase compressive forces on the knee, causing the knee joint to potentially dangerously overheat. And results from all kinds of studies have found that runners who run in this way have a higher prevalence of runner's knee compared to runners who maintain a more balanced, stable forward lean. And for a side note, we see forward-leaning runners more so in a lot of East African runners, most of which ran barefoot as children, which is why I always love placing special emphasis on doing barefoot running somewhere in your training, because the integrated sensory information that flows from running barefoot really seems to help you better manage or better balance the position of your center of mass in a more forward posture. You just get a better read from the ground about where best to orient your center mass when you run barefoot. And when you run barefoot, the upper body reflexively tends to default to leaning a little forward in natural efforts to make running comfortable in the absence of underfoot cushioning. Getting back to running backwards and its role in rebooting your forefoot running form, especially its role in protecting the knee joint, some lines of research has found clear evidence that running backward drills is on record for getting better results delivered for improving runners' knee pain. For instance, a 2012 study published in the Journal of Biomechanics, which is linked down below in the description box, found that running backwards reduced patellofemoral joint stress by increasing knee flexion at touchdown, which means the knee was more bent at touchdown, not straightened out, and prompted the center of mass to remain close to initial foot strike position, which collectively reduced mechanical stress and strain on the knee joint as compared to the runners who ran forward with a heel strike landing pattern, to which the forward running runners who ran with the heel strike interacted more aggressively with their foot on the ground at push-off or the propulsive phase of running, whereas the backward runners landed lighter, less forcefully with their foot on the ground because they automatically shifted to a forefoot strike landing pattern, which also proved to be effective in diminishing impact away from the knee joint. Overall prompted a safer, softer engagement between the foot and the ground. These findings strongly suggest that running backwards naturally prompts mechanical modifications tied to stronger mechanical protections on the knee joint and therefore may have a clinical relevance for preventing and treating runners' knee pain. And diving into more detail on how running backwards may improve mechanical entanglements that may be undermining your running performance as well as your injury prevention efforts, and why running backwards may be an ideal primer for better running form when you're running forward. As highlighted in the study, when you run backwards, you almost never make initial foot ground contact on the heel. You never heel strike. Instead, the foot defaults to landing four-footed, striking the ground on the balls of the foot ahead of the arch. So when you run backwards, you instantly shift to landing with the forefoot strike, which according to loads of research has a profoundly positive influence on minimizing compressive joint forces on the knee, as well as helping also to maximize potential energy storage in the elastic structures of the lower leg, primarily the arch of the foot and the Achilles tendon. A forefoot strike landing during running seems to make more functional use of the elastic structures in the lower leg and may help you levy more energetic means to uphold better running economy. Moreover, when you run backwards, the knees are prevented from completely unbending or hyperextending out in front of the body when the foot strikes the ground, and tends to default to increased knee flexion or a soft, subtle bend. Increased knee flexion or knee bending in both knees during running is actually a hallmark feature of most East African runners, who again, most of these runners ran barefoot during their youth and rarely sustained the number of injuries and the severity of injuries that runners from habitually shod population so often sustain. Many East African runners tend to have a very deep knee bend and also tend to show a more springy, more responsive, elastically driven stride, more functional movements in their leg swing mechanics. Therefore, ensuring both knees are softly bent and the ankle lands under the knee joint at touchdown, like so typically happens when you run backwards and you're not overreaching with your leg out in front of you and completely unbending the knee, may help you achieve higher levels of spring responsiveness in your stride. It really helps facilitate the foot to pop off the ground like a piston, but more than that, you don't end up fully pushing off intensively with your foot on the ground, but rather the foot naturally gets sucked up off the ground when the knee is bent, because again, the Achilles tendon and the arch of the foot just seems to be more spring activated when the knee joint is bent at touchdown during running, helping the foot pop off the ground with greater ease. Also, bending the knee when your forefoot strikes the ground helps secure a more effective, more safe position of the foot, in that it helps keep initial foot strike position closer to your center of mass. It brings the foot closer to your body. You're not going to overstride when the knee is bent at touchdown during running, which reduces the intensity and duration of the deceleration force of the body, meaning there's less braking, less of a collision force, which essentially translates into lighter, softer footsteps, helping reduce the pounding of your feet with the ground. As I mentioned earlier, running backwards naturally enforces tighter controls on your forward lean. It helps restrict postural back and forth sway and may deter you from overleaning as well, helping remove a lot of mechanical work off the hamstrings. When you run backwards, your movement awareness is more tuned in to the weight shift transfer of your upper body, which is going to help you lessen up on overleaning, which in turn is going to help cool off the hamstrings. Now, if you've read Pose Running, it places very special emphasis on the forward lean as being the main driver of forward momentum as well as boosting economic sufficiency. However, many runners fall into the trap of overleaning or leaning too far forward, which puts mechanical burdens on the hamstrings and can burn them out pretty quickly. Conversely, the more you practice running backwards, the more you will develop and adapt a more stable, more secured position of your forward lean. You'll effectively learn to hover your center of gravity or center of mass in that perfect balance, so you're less likely to burn out your hamstrings while being more likely to uphold smooth, sustained forward momentum. So I just thought it would be very important to do a video on how running backward drills can have a corrective effect on heel striking as well as overleaning. It will definitely help clean up and repair some mechanical inaccuracies, enabling you to make real gains for when you're running forward with a forefoot strike landing pattern. And of course, what's not in doubt is that doing backward running drills barefoot is definitely a highly effective sensory-based approach to optimizing collective neuromuscular learning that will help you manage a forward lean and a forefoot strike landing pattern that's more on target, making it easier for you to connect properly on your forefoot, and also elevates the role of the withdrawal reflexes in the leg while simultaneously making your feet progressively stronger in a functional capacity. I hope you've enjoyed this video. To stay updated on all the latest research regarding the health benefits of barefoot running and why you should take advantage of barefoot running, as well as to learn more about forefoot strike running versus heel strike running, please hit the subscribe button down below. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Have fun out there on the roads and trails. Bye for now.